Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Ma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beloved beings everywhere. So we're in chapter 7 of Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga. And he's been talking about the difficulty that is shared by so many of the world's religions is that they say, you must abandon the world. You must look to the world after. You must. It isn't even renunciation in the Vedantic sense. It's rejection. Stop the world, I want to get off. And so the Swami says, I'm starting back a little. We read at the commencement of one of the oldest of the Upanishads, whatever exists in this world is to be covered with the Lord. We have to cover everything with the Lord himself, not by a false sort of optimism, not by blinding our eyes to the evil, but by really seeing God in everything. Thus, we have to give up the world, and when the world is given up, what remains? God. What is meant? You can have your wife. It does not mean that you are to abandon her, but that you are to see God in the wife. Give up your children. What does that mean? To turn them out of doors as some human brutes do in every country? Certainly not. That is diabolism. It is not religion. But see God in your children. So in everything. In life and in death, in happiness and in misery, the Lord is equally present. I'm going to read that again. So in everything, in life and in death, in happiness and in misery, the Lord is equally present. The whole world is full of the Lord. Open your eyes and see him. This is what Vedanta teaches. Give up the world which you have conjectured, because your conjecture was based upon a very partial experience, upon very poor reasoning, and upon your own weakness. Give it up. I'm going to repeat that. Give up the world which you have conjectured. Note the word that the Swami uses. We have created the world as we conjecture it or imagine it to be. But this is flawed, he says, because your conjecture was based upon very partial experience, upon very poor reasoning, and upon your own weakness. Give that up. The world we have been thinking of for so long, the world to which we have been clinging so long, is a false world of our own creation. Give that up. Open your eyes and see that as such it See that as such. Open your eyes and see that as such. It never existed. It was a dream, Maya. What existed was the Lord himself. It is he who is the child. It is he who is in the child, in the wife, and in the husband. It is he who is in the good and the bad. He is in the sin and in the sinner. He is in life and in death. A tremendous assertion indeed. Yet that is the theme which the Vedanta wants to demonstrate, to teach, and to preach. This is just the opening theme. So before we go ahead, are there any comments or questions about what the Swami is saying, what it means, and how it works in our life? All right.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Swayam.
Yeah. So with all these recent, events, the shootings everywhere,
Mhm.
I was having a hard time again reconciling that everything is God, and in the evil also there is God. So then I resorted to saying, don't question the God who has created such magnificent orderliness in the universe knows what he is doing. I just don't understand it. And so when I gave
Yes.
that up, trying to understand, then I think I got a moment of peace. Um,
What, precisely. Our conjecture about how the world is and our judgments based on our conjecture, as the Swami said, is based on limited experience, poor reasoning, and weakness. Not that we are inherently weak, but that because our mind is not under control, we are mentally weak. And so we are easily overwhelmed by such things. There's no doubt that these are horrible events. But as has been pointed out by everyone who has gone beyond the limits of our poor reasoning and bad conjecture, we do not understand karma. We do not understand how such things happen. So, as you said, Swayam, you took refuge in the idea that you do not understand. And so that you received some peace. This is a very, very good tactic that you employed. It's not that there's anything wrong. It's just that I don't understand. Thank you. Anything else from anyone? All right. Thus, we avoid the dangers of life and its evils. Do not desire anything. What makes us miserable? The cause of all miseries from which we suffer. The cause of all miseries from which we suffer is desire. You desire something, and the desire is not fulfilled. The result is distress. In the case that Swayam brought up, we all just, we have to say, none of us desire a world in which these horrible shootings occur. So we desire a world in which they do not occur. So when they do occur, we suffer. You desire something and the desire is not fulfilled. The result is distress. If there is no desire, there is no suffering. But here too, there is the danger of my being misunderstood. So it is necessary to explain what I mean by giving up desire and becoming free from all misery. The walls have no desire, and they never suffer. True, but they never evolve. This chair has no desire, it never suffers, but it is always a chair. There is a glory in happiness, there is a glory in suffering. If I may dare to say so, there is a utility in evil too. The great lesson in misery we all know. There are hundreds of things we have done in our lives which we wish we had never done, but which at the same time have been great teachers. As for me, I am glad I have done something good and many things bad. Glad I have done something right, and glad I have committed many errors, because every one of them has been a great lesson. I, as I am now, am the resultant of all I have done and all I have thought. Every action and thought, have had their effect, and these effects are the sum total of my progress. We all understand that desires are wrong, but what is meant by giving up desires? Now, what does the Swami mean by wrong? He doesn't mean wrong, and he just means they're not utilitarian. They're not, he doesn't mean they're wrong, but like bad and wrong. No. He means that they don't serve us well. That's what he means by wrong. But what is meant by giving up desires? How could life go on? It would be the same suicidal advice, killing the desire and the man too. The solution is this: not that you should not have property, not that you should not have things which are necessary and things which are even luxuries. Have all that you want and more. Only know the truth and realize it. Wealth does not belong to anybody. Have no idea of proprietorship, possessionship. You are nobody, nor am I, nor anyone else. All belongs to the Lord, because the opening verse told us to put the Lord in everything, or cover the Lord in everything. God is in the wealth that you enjoy. He is in the desire that rises in your mind. He is in the things you buy to satisfy your desire. He is in your beautiful attire, in your beautiful ornaments. This is the line of thought. Some of you, perhaps all of you, may have heard this story about Swami Vivekananda. Before World War II, a woman that was a member of the Swami's congregation in Hollywood, California, made a small amount of money. She lived on her own. She wasn't married. She was a very talented woman, good writer. And during the war, because so many men were taken away to fight World War II, her skills were called upon. She was in public relations. And so she became quite adept and skilled at public relations writing and so on and so forth, public relations planning. And by the end of the war, she was making a great deal more money than she had made before the war. And so one day in a class, she asked Swami Prabhupada, she said, "Swami, I'm now making much more money. Should I have a bank account?" Women in those days, it was very unusual for a woman to have their own bank account. They usually had the bank account of their husband or even of their brother. But it was unusual for them to have their own. Not that it was impossible, but it was unusual. So she said, "Should I have a bank account?" And the Swami replied very sweetly and very gracefully, "Oh, my dear, yes. Have plenty bank account. But just remember, the money is not yours. It is Sri Ramakrishna's." And that's exactly what this Swami Vivekananda is saying here. Have all these things, enjoy all these things, be with all these things. But just remember, as it says in the Upanishads, as it says in the Gita, these are not yours. They are the Lord's. Sri Krishna is very explicit about that in chapter 4.
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
quick question.
Oh, don't say that. We don't know how quick it's going to be.
Okay, that's true. How do we um, be wary of it not turning into hypocrisy when we say, "Oh, this is all God and everything is God," and then we indulge too much in the um, worldly stuff.
What did the Swami just say? He had made many mistakes, and he was glad of having made all of them because they were teachers. Yes, we may. It is not called the razor's edge for nothing. It is a very difficult thing to keep all these principles and practices in mind and do them day in and day out and not fall into hypocrisy, uh, uh, as you called it. And it's what Krishna calls it also in the Gita. So you fall into hypocrisy. Well, the wonderful thing about the razor's edge is if you step off the razor's edge, you don't fall into a chasm, an endless chasm. You simply step back onto the earth, which is not very, it's not much of a step down. Particularly for spiritual aspirants, it's not much of a step down. And spiritual aspirants are the only ones that are walking or making the daily effort to walk on the razor's edge. So don't fret too much about your mistakes. As Swami Swahananda used to say, what is done is done. And then he would make this wonderful gesture with his right arm. Go forward. Go forward. In other words, get back on the razor's edge and continue your progress. We learn by our mistakes. If we're afraid to make mistakes, then we make no progress, because the only true measure of spiritual progress, as the Swami used to say, is change in behavior. We find out that this behavior is inappropriate by doing it and experiencing the results. And so, yes, we can easily let it's not called Mahamaya for nothing. Mahamaya is ever trying. It's built that way. It's ever trying to, the word that was I just read in the gospel yesterday, I guess, was enchant us, enchant us. It's in one of the songs that the master sings, one of Ram Prasad's songs. So when we discover we have once again fallen into enchantment, then we extract ourselves by the application of the principles and practices that this spiritual education we've undertaken has taught us. And you've remarked, Swayam, that one of the lessons that really struck deep in you was the lesson about what deserves my attention. And so when you become aware, oh, I've fallen into this enchantment, which I prefer to the word hypocrisy, because hypocrisy seems to have this it seems to make you less. That you discover you've fallen into enchantment again, then remind yourself, well, what in this situation deserves my attention? And then, one steps back on the razor's edge.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Brother Shankara?
Yes, Haima.
This is Haima. Just to add something to what you are saying and Swayam is saying, I think those mistakes and adversities, those are all steps up the spiritual ladder to get to where we want to get. It seems that way to me.
Yes.
Right? That's why we are here on this step right now, because of that we have experienced in our life. Here we are.
Some of you have heard the song, We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder.
Exactly.
In its version that's sung here.
Right.
And it says, every rung goes higher, higher. Children, do you want your freedom? Keep on climbing, you will make it.
Yeah.
They are waiting to take your hand. Yes, they are waiting to take your hand.
We have to go through all those in order to get where we want to get slowly. It's a ladder, stepping up on it. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Haima. And that's the Swami did not say this about his successes and his mistakes just because he was being boastful. No. He was saying, I, like you, make mistakes. But he set himself perhaps a little apart by saying, I take great pleasure and happiness in the fact that I've made the mistakes, because they are what made me who I am this moment. Anything else? Okay. He is in the things that you buy to satisfy your desire. He is in your beautiful attire and your beautiful ornaments. This is the line of thought. All will be metamorphosed. All will be metamorphosed as soon as you begin to see things in that light. If you put God in your every movement, in your conversation, in your form, in everything, the whole scene changes, and the world, instead of appearing as some woe and misery, will become a heaven. The kingdom of heaven is within you, says Jesus. So says the Vedanta and every great teacher. He that hath eyes to see, let him see, and he that hath ears to hear, let him hear. Again, quoting Christ. The Vedanta proves that the truth for which we have been searching all this time is present and was all the time within us, and it was all the time with us. In our ignorance, we thought we had lost it and went around the world crying and weeping, struggling to find the truth, while all along it was dwelling in our own hearts. There alone can we find it. Now, what's the portent of that? There alone. We have to turn from the world and search within our own hearts. But when we do, we find it. If we understand the giving up of the world in its old, crude sense, then it would come to this, that we must not work, that we must be idle, sitting like lumps of earth, neither thinking nor doing anything, but must become fatalists, driven about by every circumstance, ordered about by the laws of nature, drifting from place to place. That would be the result. But that is not what is meant. We must work. Ordinary mankind, driven everywhere by false desire, what do they know of work? The man propelled by his own feelings and his own senses, what does he know about work? He works, who is not propelled by his own desires, by any selfishness whatsoever. He works who has no ulterior motive in view. He works who has nothing to gain from work. These are just paraphrases from chapter 3 of the Gita. This is the secret of work. He works who is not propelled by his own desires, by any selfishness whatsoever. He works who has no ulterior motive in view. He works who has nothing to gain from work. In other words, he has deified the work. He has covered the work with the divine and said, it is your work. Every blink of my eye, every growth of my fingernail, and everything greater and more seemingly important than that is your work. Who enjoys the picture, the seller or the seer? The seller is busy with his accounts, computing what his gain will be, how much profit he will realize on the picture. His brain is full of that. He is looking at the hammer and watching the bids. He is looking at the auctioneer's hammer and watching the bids. He is intent on hearing how fast the bids are rising. That man is enjoying the picture who has gone there without any intention of buying or selling. That man is enjoying the picture who has gone there without any intention of buying or selling. He looks at the picture and enjoys it. So this whole universe is a picture. And when these desires have vanished, men will enjoy the world. And then this buying and selling and these foolish ideas of possession will be ended. The money lender gone, the buyer gone, the seller gone. This world remains the picture. The money lender gone, the buyer gone, the seller gone. This world remains the picture, a beautiful painting. I never read of any more beautiful conception of God than the following. He is the great poet, the ancient poet. The whole universe is his poem, coming in verses and rhymes and rhythms, written in infinite bliss. Does anyone know where that comes from? He doesn't cite a source. He is the great poet, the ancient poet. The whole universe is his poem, coming in verses and rhymes and rhythms, written in infinite bliss. When we have given up desires, then alone shall we be able to read and enjoy this universe of God. Then everything will become deified.
Could he be Rumi, Brother Shankara? The
It
poet?
could be, but
He doesn't say.
he doesn't say. It could be Rumi.
Mhm. Because Rumi once said, why do you stay in the prison when the door is open?
Yes. If I were just to guess, I wouldn't guess Rumi, but Ram Prasad. But
I see.
just because the master was so fond of Ram Prasad, Sri Ramakrishna was so fond. When we have given up desires, then alone shall we be able to read and enjoy this universe of God. Then everything will become deified. Anything else before we go on?
Swamiji's words are like just so powerful. It's like when the swimming pool is muddy and the pool cleaner comes and puts some chemicals and it just clears up. Suddenly, when I hear these words, mind just seems to want to accept, and it seems so clear. Only
Yes.
thing, it gets muddy again.
Well, why does it get muddy again? It gets muddy again because that is the nature of Maya. So how do we resist Maya? What is the Swami saying? By deifying it. Oh, this enchantment that you're offering me. This is part of your ancient poem. This is part of this enchantment is, so we deify it. There was once a very strange realized soul who came to the Dakshineshwar temple. He was carrying in one hand a potted plant, and in another hand a dead stick. He was dressed in rags, and yet Sri Ramakrishna said when he sang the songs to the mother, when he came and stood before the Kali temple and sang the songs to the mother, the whole temple shook. Well, because of the reverence in which the master held him, the master's nephew, who was still serving him at the time, Fridoy, when this man left and went along the road out of the temple compound, Fridoy ran after him and said, teach me what you know. And the man threw rocks at him and said, no, 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 no. And Fridoy insisted, oh, no, no, you must teach me, you must teach me. So the man said, when you can see the water of the Ganges, which was running just right there, when you can see the water of the Ganges and this ditch water, and we all know in the 1840s, 50s, 60s, like that, what that ditch water would have been like. When you can see the waters of the Ganges and this ditch water as equally pure, then I will teach you. So Swayam, the dirty pool, only we are the pool cleaner. We are the ones who can apply the principles and practices and first see the pool as perfect even when it's dirty by deifying it. I mean, as you pointed out earlier, these two shootings within days of one another really muddied the waters. What is wanting is not any change in what universe manifests, but in our deification of it. Now, am I saying it's easy? No, it is not easy. And the explanation you gave earlier, taking refuge in your lack of understanding, how can a universe that is created by this ancient poet in all of its wonder and glory and, we're told, perfection, how can this be an imperfection? So it's not that, it is my lack of understanding.
Thank you, Brother.
Then everything will become deified. Anyone else? Anything? Nooks and corners, byways and shady places, which we thought dark and unholy, will be all deified. They will all reveal their true nature, and we shall smile at ourselves and think that all this weeping and crying has been but child's play, and we were only standing by, watching. Now there's that witness consciousness that has been spoken of so often. Nooks and corners, byways and shady places, which we thought dark and unholy, will all be deified. They will all reveal their true nature, and we shall smile at ourselves and think that all this weeping and crying has been but child's play, and we were only standing by, watching. So do your work, says the Vedanta. It first advises us how to work by giving up the apparent, elusive world. What is meant by that? Seeing God everywhere. Thus do your work. Desire to live 100 years? Have all earthly desires if you wish. Only deify them, convert them into heaven. Have the desire to live a long life of helpfulness, of blissfulness, and activity on this earth. Thus, working, you will find the way out. There is no other way. You've heard it said from here that our left mind, all of our reasoning and trying to figure things out, is an exitless maze. As Einstein pointed out, the left mind awareness is a servant. It's not meant to say this is what's so. It's meant to get things done for us. And he says the right mind awareness is the genius, and that's the one that the Swami is talking about. That's the one that deifies everything. It is the genius. And Einstein pointed out, we have created a society that reveres the servant and ignores the genius. And so the Swami is reminding us here, remember the genius. Be with the genius. There is no other way. The left mind awareness, with its reasoning and trying to figure things out and learning and learning and learning, thinking that somehow in all that learning there will be a magic bullet that resolves everything. No, no, no. Thus working, you will find the way out. There is no other way. If a man plunges headlong into foolish luxuries of the world without knowing the truth, he has missed his footing. He cannot reach the goal. And if a man curses the world, goes into a forest, mortifies his flesh, and kills himself little by starvation, makes his heart a broken waste, kills out all feelings and becomes harsh, stern, and dried up, that man has also missed the way. These are the two extremes, the two mistakes at either end. Both have lost the way, both have missed the goal. So work, says the Vedanta, putting God in everything and knowing him to be in everything. That's the principle. So work, says the Vedanta, putting God in everything and knowing him to be in everything, taking a stand for it until you actually experience it. Work incessantly. That's the practice. Work incessantly, holding life as something deified, as God himself, and knowing that this is all we have to do. This is all we should ask for. God is in everything. Where else shall we go to find him? He is already in every work, in every thought, in every feeling. Thus knowing we must work. This is the only way, there is no other. Thus the effects of work will not bind us. We have seen how false desires are the cause of the misery and evil we suffer, but when they are thus deified, purified through God, they bring no evil, they bring no misery. They, those who have not learnt this secret, will have to live in a demoniacal world until they discover it. Many do not know what an infinite mine of bliss is in them. I'm going to repeat that. Those who have not learnt this secret will have to live in a demoniacal world until they discover it. Many who do not know what an infinite mine of bliss is in them, around them, everywhere, they have not yet discovered it. Many do not know what an infinite mine of bliss is in them, around them, everywhere. They have not yet discovered it. What is a demoniacal world? The Vedanta says, ignorance. We have time. Let's discuss this. What is it that this calls forth in you? What is it that you're hearing? What is it that, what in you questions this, doubts it, resists it? What is it in you that embraces it and says, yes, oh yes? Can we hear any of that from anyone?
I think it's calling for self-realization, finding divine within ourselves to live in peace.
Thank you.
That's what I'm thinking, Brother Shankara. That's what he's calling for. Meditation, go deep into yourself, finding self. You find the whole universe.
Thank you. Yes. Anyone else?
I think this chapter itself is a kind of meditation. The words that Swamiji has used to in this talk makes the deification that much more easier for me, I think, if I do manana on this again and again.
Well, that's it. It won't do us any good at all. We could memorize this chapter. We could memorize it word for word until we take it into us through, you use the word manana, contemplation, concentration on the principles and practices and their daily application, moment to moment, hour to hour, day to day. Whenever we find ourselves having either become enchanted or fallen into one of the traps, anger at the world, disappointment, shame, all of these things that are there for the left mind to use as distractions and exult in and indulge in. Oh, I've done it again. I've fallen into this trap, and oh, it's so shameful. And how will I ever? And oh, la 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 la. Instead of saying, no, the Swami said, even the errors and mistakes are part of the glory. Thank you, Swami. Yes, doing the manana, which is an active process, comparing the truth as we have been given it by Swamiji, comparing and contrasting the truth of how that would mean that we think, speak, and act with how we're thinking, speaking, and acting now, without being at all unhappy about how we're thinking, speaking, and acting now. Just saying, well, this is the product of my continued ignorance. Here is the truth that the Swami has given us and told us that actualization of this is the only way out. So I'm going to take a stand for the truth of what he says and see how I can apply it moment to moment, hour to hour, day by day. Anything else?
You know, I was thinking about what Swamiji says about who enjoys the picture, the seller, not the seller or the buyer, but just the witness,
Exactly, the seer.
the seer. And also, it seems to me that most importantly, the chapter is emphasizing just that sense of oneness, that God is in everything. So there is no need to fear that even if something, even if it's something terrible, it's somehow Mother working.
And there are terrible things. Mother has her terrible aspects. The Chandi is very clear about it. And yet, even in her terrible aspects, she is claiming those people. Don't you reduce to ashes all asuras by mere sight? Yet you direct your weapons against them, so that even the inimical ones, purified by the missiles, may attain the higher realms. Such is your most kindly intention toward them. Because, as we heard last night in our study of Holy Mother, all beings are her children, and all their acts are seen with equanimity in her sight, and she is claiming each one of them as her own and lifting them up. Yes, Divya, you're absolutely right.
Thank you, Brother Shankara.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Please. All right. We are dying of thirst, sitting on the banks of the mightiest river. We are dying of hunger, sitting near heaps of food. Here is the blissful universe, yet we do not find it. We are in it all the time, and we are always mistaking it. Now, what is mistaking? And it's self-explanatory. We're taking it wrongly. We're taking it amiss. We're mistaking it. We're taking it wrongly. We are in it all the time, this blissful universe. And yet we are always mistaking it. Religion proposes to find this out for us. The longing for this blissful universe is in all hearts. It has been the search of all nations. It is the one goal of religion. And this ideal is expressed in various languages, in different religions. It is only the difference of language that makes all these apparent divergences. One expresses a thought in one way, another in a little different, another a little differently, yet perhaps each is meaning exactly what the other is expressing in a different language. More questions arise in connection with this. It is very easy to talk. From my childhood, I have heard of seeing God everywhere and in everything, and then I can really enjoy the world. But as soon as I mix with the world and get a few blows from it, the idea vanishes. I am walking in the street thinking that God is in every man, and a strong man comes along and gives me a push, and I fall flat upon the footpath. Then I rise up quickly with a clenched fist. The blood has rushed to my head, and the reflection goes, immediately I have become mad. Everything is forgotten. Instead of encountering God, I see the devil. Ever since we were born, we have been told to see God in all. Every religion teaches that. See God in everything and everywhere. Do you not remember in the New Testament how Christ says so? We have all been taught that. But it is when we come to the practical side that the difficulty begins. You all remember how you all remember how in Aesop's fables, a fine stag is looking at his form reflected in a lake and saying to his young one, how powerful I am. Look at my splendid head. Look at my limbs. Look how strong and muscular they are, and how swiftly I can run. In the meantime, he hears the barking of dogs in the distance and immediately takes to his heels. And after he has run several miles, he comes back panting. The young one says, you just told me how strong you were. How was it that when the dogs barked, you ran away? Yes, my son, but when the dogs bark, all my confidence vanishes. Such is the case with us. We think highly of humanity. We feel ourselves strong and valiant. We make grand resolves. But when the dogs of trial and temptation bark, we are like the stag in the fable. Then, if such is the case, what is the use of teaching all these things? There is the greatest use. The use is this, that perseverance will finally conquer. Nothing can be done in a day. You've heard it said from here a number of times that Swami Sridharan, who is demonstrably a realized soul, Swami Sridharan, now in charge of the work in Australia and New Zealand. You can find his work online, Sridharananda, Sridharananda. One of his favorite, he has two things that he says that are very endearing. One is my dears, or my dear. That's how he addresses everyone. And he says, slowly and slowly, my dears. It will happen slowly and slowly. This last Sunday, I read a quote from him in which he was talking about how the mantra, slowly and slowly, cleans the mirror of the heart. He was talking about Chaitanya's prayer. Slowly and slowly. Perseverance will finally conquer. Nothing can be done in a day. And this is why those people who go from scripture to scripture, teacher to teacher, listening and listening and listening and listening and reading and reading and reading and reading, but not using what they're given, they're looking for a magic bullet. Something that when they if I just learn that, then it will resolve everything in a moment. This is a trick played on us by our left mind. It simply doesn't happen. No matter how many books you read, no matter how many teachers you go to, no matter how many lectures you listen to, if you don't apply the principles and practices and the teachings and make them your own slowly and slowly, nothing gets resolved. Okay, it's a couple of minutes after 9. Is there anything from anyone, any final thoughts at all? The Swami is challenging us greatly. We're about 4/5 of the way through this. So next week we'll finish it up.
Namaste, Brother Shankara.
Yes.
I would like to share a thought about this particular last line and what you were talking about, that people, jumping from one guru to another guru. And, Swami Yogeshananda recently passed over, and we had this memorial service, and we talked about him. What I now think about, the more I think about him is that I saw him, 7-8 years, and then later on also. And some other monks I have known, and I'm sure you have known more. Nothing extraordinary you can see from outside. Day in, day out, I went probably twice a week to the center on Tuesdays and then on Saturday, and there was nothing extraordinary. Nothing extraordinary happened, to be honest. Once in a while, we could see that there was something he experienced or something he was very, he would like to share. But I would go and sit and in the shrine, and we would have aarti, and Saturday there was work and classes, and what I see is that what Swamiji is talking about is that all these things don't happen within few months or years, but what I could see is that there was a consistent practice. That is what I learned from him, is that Sri Ramakrishna gives an example that even if it doesn't rain, a farmer goes and farms, he tills the land and whatnot. And so that's what we are going to, that's what I think we need to take it from here and from the monks like Yogeshananda ji, is that day in, day out, we just do our practice. We may not see anything happening. He once actually explained a beautiful graph. He says that the graph goes like this, up and down, up and down. So you are looking at that minor up and down every day, saying that nothing is happening, but that graph is actually going up, and you don't see it. And he actually explained this beautifully in a Tuesday class one day. So that's what I think is, sometimes when you brush shoulders with such great people, it just gives you an idea that what spiritual life is. They just show it through the action.
Exactly. And what was the Swami's action? Constant work, perseverance, and loving service to his congregation. And look what it left us. Look what it left us. It's so heartwarming. I have the blessed privilege of going in that shrine every morning and turning on the light and sitting with the presence there. The Swami left us this magnificent place. And he would take no credit, He would take no credit. He just said, well, I'm just doing my work. I'm just the servant. I'm just da-da-da, whatever he would say. But look what he left us. So thank you, Shailesh, for sharing that. Yes, Yogeshananda was a noble soul, a great teacher. And in 2013, after all these years of effort and being somewhat marginalized by the Ramakrishna order, in Chicago there was a 150th anniversary celebration of Swami Vivekananda's birthday, of his birth, 1863, 2013. And there was a head table, and then there were the tables set up. And the monks and nuns were arrayed according to their seniority. And Swami Yogeshananda was set right at the very first place next to that head table in this. Finally, Swami Suhitananda, who was at that time General Secretary, now Vice President, Swami Suhitananda acknowledged Swami Yogeshananda's seniority and his contribution. He was like a boy about it. He was like a boy about it. He just ran down to Brahma Vidyananda and myself and said, I don't know how to act. I don't know what to say. He was so dear. So thank you for your reminiscence and your affirmation of the Swami. Shailesh.
Thank you.
Anything else from anyone?
Brother Shankara.
Yes, dear.
It's, Liam, I just wanted to share one quote that I came to my mind when you were talking about the individuals who go from teacher to teacher and read book to book. That I heard one time was that, the temple has hundreds of doors, but you can only need to enter one of them to get inside the temple.
Well said. Do you remember who said that?
Actually, a friend of mine named Alok. He moved here from Varanasi, and he shared that with me pretty recently.
Well, it is a very potent quote. Yeah. We're not going to get to the inner sanctum by getting to the first wall we come to through going through this door, so running out that door and running to another door, we'll find that same first wall. We'll get to the inner sanctum by slowly going, oh, I went through this door. Where's the next opening to deeper into the temple? Thank you, Liam. Anyone else? All right, dears. Well, we'll take it up there next week. As I said, we're about 4/5 of the way through. We may finish next week. Depends on how much discussion there is. Let there be peace in outer space. Let there be peace in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. Let there be peace in the herbs, the plants, and the trees. May the gods be peaceful. May the whole universe be pervaded by peace. Let that infinite universal peace prevail throughout my being. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. And then our final salutation. Jai Shri Guru Maharaj Ji Ki Jai, Durga, Durga, Durga. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be cheerful. May you have peace of mind.
Thank you.
May you go forward in the Mother's loving and protective embrace. Until next time, the next time will be Saturday. Oh, and I do want to remind everyone that on Sunday, Dr. Lloyd Allen from the McAfee School of Theology at Mercer University, who's spoken to us before and is really a remarkable man. He's very deeply studied the work of Thomas Merton, the Catholic monk and mystic. And he will speak to us on killing lesser stages of faith, killing lesser gods. And it's based in the work of Thomas Merton. So that's this Sunday at 11 a.m. on Zoom, of course. And I will say that it looks like, all things being equal, our first face-to-face gathering as a congregation will be on July 4th. By that, everyone should have been vaccinated. Everyone should have been, the situation, by that I mean not just in our congregation, but in the wider world, everyone who's going to be vaccinated should be vaccinated. So we should be able to get together on July 4th as a congregation and celebrate together, which I would look forward to very much. Any last thought from anyone else? All right, dears. Thank you all.
Thank you, Shankara.
Until,
Everyone.
Thank you. Hari Om, Namaste.
Namaste, Jai Ma.
until next time.
Until next time.